Hey buddy, it's Cody the Sparkeneer here. So I figured with the new year, we could do some new styles of videos. So I put together a little tier list of all the species of fish that I've ever had the pleasure of catching, and we're gonna rank them from S to E. I guess I don't know why all the tier lists are different. I just got this one off of Google Images, got all the fish pictures, and then we're gonna see how this goes. I'm not a professional tier list maker, nor am I a professional content creator, but we're just doing this for fun. So these fish are in no particular order. Let's go ahead and start with the striper or striped bass. So these things are incredibly fun to catch. They get absolutely massive in size, and they're super aggressive. The only thing that really keeps it from top tiers for me is I haven't really had that much experience catching stripers. I've caught some and they put up one heck of a fight and they're super fun, but when it comes down to it, for me personally, I gotta put them in A tier. I know a lot of people would put them in S tier because a lot of people just strictly target stripers. They're an awesome fish to catch, but I'll keep them in A tier. They're not quite S for me because I've never really had the notion to particularly target stripers. I've just caught them on accident while fishing for other things, and I had fun with them, but like I said, never really occurred to me to actually target them as a species. So, all right, next one is the creek chub. So I've caught a lot of creek chubs over the years on like ultralight when we go micro fishing and stuff, and I mean, all fish are fun to catch, but it's a small little tiny creek chub. It's not like it's gonna put up a heck of a fight. You can't eat them, so that knocks it down. And like the only time I particularly want to target creek chubs is when I need them for bait for other fish, such as musky or catfish or something. So it's got to go in the lowest tier, which is E. Sorry, creek chub. All right, next is the smallmouth bass. Now, smallmouth bass, although they may be smaller in size than the largemouth, I think they make up for it with aggression and how hard they fight. They fight incredibly hard. They're super fun to catch. They're an absolute beautiful fish, and I think that the smallmouth bass is going to be our first S tier. A lot of people, love fishing for smallmouth bass, and I don't blame them because they're just an awesome fish to go and target and catch. And hopefully, come spring, me and Jay will be targeting some smallmouth along with some musky in a certain section of this river that we got close. All right, next is the bluegill. Now I'm gonna like condense all of the sunfish into just this one because they're all basically the same. You got the green sunfish, you got the bluegill, you got the long ear, you got the pumpkin seeds, you got the hybrids. They're all basically the same. They're fun to catch. They're super fun to catch. Put on a super light ultralight gear or fly fishing when you hook into like a big old slab when you're fly fishing. They fight really hard, but they don't fight for very long, and they taste great. I mean, bluegill are one of the very few fish that I can actually stomach, but they don't get very big, and although they are pretty fun, they don't fight as hard as some of the bigger fish. And you could bully them around, let's be honest. So I'm gonna have to put bluegill in D tier. They're a step above the creek chub, but not that far above the creek chub. So this is a picture of a white bass, but it's supposed to be a hybrid. fun fact is, I have never caught a white bass, which is strange because we have white bass in the area. They are native to my area, but I've just never hooked into one. I've only caught the stripers and the hybrids. I've never caught a white bass at all. So we're gonna just pretend that this picture is a picture of a hybrid, okay? So hybrids, I think they're a mid fish. I mean, yeah, they fight relatively hard, but I don't think that they are like something you're gonna write home about. Yeah, they're just a mid fish. They're right in between. They're fun to catch, but you know, they're definitely not up to S tier. So we're just gonna put this guy in C, mid. So up next is the brown trout. Now when it comes to trout species, I love catching all trout, but the brown trout is my favorite. They're so aggressive, they fight really hard, they're more apt to go for a more active style of fishing, you know, fishing lures, fishing jigs, you know, where you're actually working them. Whereas other trout species are more lethargic. Brown trouts are more active, and they are super fun to catch. They're super fun to target. They're a beautiful fish. They get really, really big in the right circumstances. So because of that, I've got to put the brown trout in S tier. It's my favorite trout species. I gotta put it up there. I love it. So up next is the crappie, whatever you want to call it. I'm putting just the black crappie picture on here, but I'm gonna, you know, put them both in the same category because they're essentially the same. So they're a pretty fun fish to catch. They fight pretty hard, but when it comes down to it, they're just a slightly bigger, more predatory, more aggressive bluegill. They fight about the same, although they definitely taste better than bluegill. If we're going off taste alone, the crappie is going to be an S tier, but I'm going off of how fun they are to catch. I think they're a mid tier, although if you get into a school of them in the right circumstances, it's just like, you know, one right after the other, and that could be super, super fun. But, you know, in my experiences, it's just like one here, one there, because I don't actually go out and find where they're schooled up and target the crappie species. So I'm just gonna put them in mid tier, right next to the hybrid. A fun fish to catch, a fun fish to eat, but not one of my favorites. Up next is the common carp or the grass carp or pretty much any carp species. They're all about the same. They can get ginormous and they fight super, super hard. Like the carp, they can fight really hard, but they only fight really hard for a little bit, and then it's kind of like dragging in a heavy stick or a heavy log in my experiences. Now I've caught a few carp here and there. It's just something that I've accidentally hooked into every once in a while, but the carp that I have caught have been big and they have fought hard and they're pretty fun to catch. I don't necessarily like carp, but they're definitely fun. I could see why people like to go out and actually target the carp species because they fight so hard, they get big. And I think this is going to be our first B tier. Even though I'm not big into carp. I don't like them. I mean, they're weird with that like sucker mouth thing. But I don't like them. I don't like to look at them, but they're fun to catch. All right, up next, it's one of the goats. It is the biggest sport fishing fish. It is an icon. It is the largemouth bass. Now the largemouth bass, it's fun. It's fun to catch. These guys can get absolutely ginormous. Just go and look at any fishing trip from Florida and you will see how big these guys can get. Florida or Japan. Japan has some monster largemouth bass. These guys are fantastic. They're beautiful. They fight super hard. They're super aggressive. I love largemouth bass. And even though they don't fight as hard as smallmouth bass, they're still super fun to catch, and they are hands down an S tier. I mean, come on, guys. Did you think that it was going to go anywhere else? The ditch pickle is S tier. 100%. All right, up next is our first catfish species, and that's a channel cat. I fish for channel cat because they're stocked around here, but they're not very fun to catch. I mean, they're not that aggressive. They don't fight very hard. They don't get super big. I mean, they have the ability to get super big, but around my area, they're small. They're small channel cats. So I really don't like to catch channel cats. It's just not my thing. I know a lot of people in my area and a lot of people throughout the United States like to go out and catch channel cat. And a lot of people like to eat channel cat too. I'm not a big catfish guy, so I don't eat catfish, but I don't necessarily like catching channel cat. They're just not fun for me. But, you know, they have the ability to get big, so I think that's going to keep them off of D tier, or keep them off of E tier and going into D tier. I know I just upset some catfishermen out there. I'm sorry. All right, up next is the rainbow trout. Rainbow trout are super fun to catch. I really enjoy fishing for rainbow trout. That's actually what we have the most in our area, because that is what is stocked in our area, is rainbow trout. They can be pretty aggressive in stream settings and creeks. They will go after lures, go after jigs, and things of that nature. But if you're fishing in a lake setting, then that's more of kind of like a slower style fishing. Fish on the bottom, let your bait float and do this, or fish underneath a float and just kind of let the motion of the water and the wind kind of do the things for you. And then the rainbows that are swimming by will be opportunists and take your bait. So, you know, when it comes to lake fishing, I think it's kind of boring a little bit, even though, you know, I still enjoy it, because when I go out lake fishing for rainbow trout, I'm always with my friends and we're always just, you know, talking and having fun, you know, amongst ourselves, and the fishing is just a good setting, and hopefully catching a fish is just a bonus to that. So when it comes to rainbow trout, I prefer stream and creek fishing for them. It's a lot of fun. They do get big. They are aggressive. They do fight pretty hard, but they're not as aggressive as a brown trout, and they don't fight as hard. I'm going to have to put rainbow trout in the B tier. Great, fun fish to catch, just not at that like legendary status of A or S. So up next is the flathead or mudcat. We call them mudcats around here, but they're flatheads. And they have the ability to get absolutely massive, and they fight super, super hard. They're a super fun fish to catch. They're definitely my favorite catfish to catch, even though I've only caught a few of them in my, you know, in my limited catfishing experience. But the ones I have caught were fairly big, and they fought really great, and they were super fun to catch, and I loved catching them. So mudcats are definitely up above the channel cat. They are more apt to target live fish like the creek chub, or maybe some live bluegills. So that's a plus. You know, you're live fishing, and maybe even some lure fishing for some mudcats. So they're definitely funner to fish for than channel cats, who will pretty much eat anything like hot dogs or Slim Jims or marshmallows or soap. They're definitely funner to catch, funner to target. They fight harder, they get bigger, and for that reason, I'm gonna put them. They're rare too. They're pretty rare around in my area, anyways. Are they mid? I think they're a step above mid. I'm gonna have to go B tier. B tier for the mudcat. So up next we have rock bass. Now, I don't know. rock bass to me are like bluegill, but worse because they don't taste very good and they don't fight very hard. They're more apt to like just be a nuisance. Yeah, they're E tier or F, whatever you want to call it. They're bottom tier. They're bottom tier. My dog agrees with me. All right, let's move on to the next one, and that's a blue catfish. I've only caught one blue cat my entire life, and it wasn't even that big. It was a baby blue catfish. But, you know, I still caught one, and it was still relatively fun. I think if I had more experience with blue cats, I would put them at B with mud cats, but I'm gonna have to put them with C because I know that the blue cat can get absolutely monstrous in size, but I've never caught one that big. I don't have experience catching them that big, so I have to go with what I know and put them as a mid fish in C tier. I know that's gonna make a lot of people out there mad, a lot of the cat fishermen out there. I'm sorry, but that's just my experience with them. Okay, so up next is it's my favorite fish of all time, the musky, the muskellunge, or the deformed pike is actually what muskellunge stands for, deformed pike. So if you want to call it a deformed pike, you can. It's not going to get upset, but it's the greatest fish of all time. It's just the best, and it's just S tier. It's high S tier. I'll put it as high up as I can. It's high S tier. If there was a tier above S, the muskie would be in it. They're super hard to catch. Once you do hook into one, they fight hard. They're super aggressive. They're the ultimate freshwater predator, and they deserve the spot in high S tier. It's my favorite fish of all time. It's a muskie. There's a reason that, you know, my logo for Sparkeneer Fishing is the muskie. It's the best. I love it. I love the muskie. I can't. I'm sorry. I love it. All right, up next is the yellow bullhead catfish. Now, I know there's several species of bullhead catfish, but I've only had experience with the yellow bullhead catfish, and I'm just gonna put them down here with the channel cat. You know, they don't get very big. They don't fight very hard, but they do make excellent bait when it comes, you know, if you're fishing for bigger species. The bullheads do make for excellent bait, so I guess that's one thing they got going for them. Up next, you have the walleye. Walleye, amazing fish. A lot of people think they're ugly. I actually think they look really cool. They have this like prehistoric kind of nature about them. I really do enjoy targeting walleye, even though I don't do it as much as I target other species such as bass, trout, and muskie. Walleye are definitely up there for one of my favorite fish. They taste great. They fight pretty hard. They're fun to fish for. There's a lot of jigging, a lot of lure work involved. They're super fun, super active fish, and they have the ability to get very big. So for that reason, I'm going to put them up there with the striper in A tier. They're one of my favorite fish. They're just around here. They're a little bit harder to come by, and I don't know. There's just something about them that doesn't really put them on par with some of the other S tiers. All right, so 3 more fish that I didn't have room to put on here before, but here we go. Up first is the spotted bass. Now, spotted bass don't get as big as largemouth, but they definitely get prettier. They have this really unique gold about them, and you know, I've only caught very few spotted bass, but they are absolutely gorgeous fish. And like I said, they don't get as big, but they definitely get prettier, and you know, they're still pretty aggressive. They still fight pretty hard, but just not as hard as the smallmouth and the largemouth. So for that reason, I'm going to put the spotted bass in A tier. Up next is the tiger trout. I've only caught one of these before, and it it's definitely an aggressive predatory fish. It has little teeth. It's a beautiful pattern on it, beautiful colors. Their face is a little like gnarled up looking, so it looks a little kind of like, but it like body wise, it's a beautiful fish. I loved catching the tiger trout that I caught. Honestly, I probably should have had it mounted because it was quite big and very beautiful, and it definitely fought harder than any rainbow trout I've ever caught, but it's a lot rarer around here than rainbows. So I don't know if I'd put it in the same tier as the rainbow trout, or if I want to put the tiger trout one tier up. I think its beauty and the aggressiveness, and I think they're funner to fish for, because even in lake settings they tend to go more after lures. So if you're targeting tiger trout, you're not just setting and forgetting, you're using more lures or even live bait. So I think they're funner to fish for than rainbows, and for that reason I gotta put them in A tier. So up last here we have the Longnose Gar, and I just love this fish. I love the coloration on them. You have the green on top, the white bellies, the orange and black spotted fins. I love the scales on them, how they're basically armor, and I love the bony kind of long elongated snout that they have, and the sharp teeth, and I just love them. They're quite literally a swimming fossil, and even though they don't fight very hard, it's always a joy to hook into one because they're a little bit rare around my area, and I just love this fish. But you know, because it doesn't fight that hard, and you can't eat them, and you know, there's some downsides to the gar, I'm gonna have to put them as a mid fish, a mid tier. So this is my tier list of sport fishing fish, and the ones that I have experience with. Looking at it now, I need to broaden my horizons a little bit and see if I can catch even more freshwater species to fill this tier list up even further. So that's pretty much it. I'm Cody the Sparkaneer. If you want to, comment down below, what is your S-ranked fish? Freshwater. I have zero experience with saltwater, so if you list a saltwater species down there, I'm going to have to just take your word for it. So if you have freshwater S-ranked fishes, leave them in the comments. I'd love to read about them. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff. As always, be safe out there. Have a good day. Thanks for watching, and God bless. I still don't know how to end videos very well.